run Python main.py, what this does is it starts up a server which listens for API requests and then sends back a JSON response. So if you run Python test.py, what this will be doing is sending one of these API requests to the server. And you can see it here. This is the file. And you see some of the data that is being sent, which has a question, what is the weather in New York, and also who's the president of the US, as well as authorizations for security purposes, because we don't want people to be asking and sending requests without having the correct authorization for being a valid user. So you can see here, this is the response from the server. The weather in New York is clear skies with temperatures and so on. The president of the United States is Joe Biden, which isn't up to date, which is you can find the most up to date from going to the website. That's mainly because the model was trained prior from November 2nd, 2023. So it doesn't have the current information unless we add in a sort of RAG system or give it the ability to search, right? But that's for later on that Professor Gab could decide on. But you can see some of the things that were happening while he got the request. If you look for triggers, you can find the trigger statements for the application that he decided to use. And here's a list of those triggers. So first, from getting the question I was being asked, he decided to use the Weather API app. So we have a list of applications that you could easily plug and play. Add your own application and here another model that the intent model would decide to use depending on what the user is asking for, right? So we decided to use the Weather API app for one of the questions, and the trigger for that question was weather in New York, right? That was the specific trigger that made it decide to use the Weather API app. And it also got information as location name, New York. So when he was using the app knew that the person wanted information for New York. And then again, this is another app-based model. So this app is used for any question that's asked that's not a stored app, right? So we don't have a dedicated app for giving the president of the US. So it decided to use the base model app, which is, as the name states, a base model, which could reason through the user's question, use its repository of trained data to give out an AI response, basically. And yeah, and once it does that, this is some of the information that it got from the API. So the weather app uses the open weather API, and this is the information it got for asking the weather API. It got the coordinates for New York, and get the temperatures, visibilities, winds, all that information. And then it um, aggregates the information together and gives the response in a beautiful format that the user can understand, right? And the my favorite thing on this in general is the plug and play factor of it. So let's say a student wants to create a model or an app that's for a specific purpose that gives our response. So it's like an image model, right? So the classification will understand that the user is asking for an image and it could decide to go through and use the image model to respond to the user. So which I find which is cool. All right. Um, this was my showcase. Hopefully this was enough to show what's everything that's happening with this application since it's a lot of code, but it was pretty fun.